Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are still waiting on one commissioner, so we will give him a couple of minutes and then we will get started.
While we're waiting, did anybody there have power outages this morning or yesterday? Everybody okay?
Well, we in Seattle, in Ballard, had none, but I was on the east side this morning, and they had plenty of Bellevue and so forth.
Yeah, I lost power for a couple hours this morning. There's quite a few trees down in various areas in Spokane, and still quite a few people, 67,000 people or so without power.
Holy cow. That's a lot of people.
It is still really windy.
Last night it was crazy windy here and crazy rainy, and then this morning it was just like really still, and the sky was, the stars were beautiful, but it was wacky last night.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sending it our way.
We said, go east.
Go east, young man. Go east.
That's funny.
Okay, so I've asked Jimmy to try and contact Dr. Chung for us, but I'm going to go ahead and read the housekeeping, and then I will pass it over to you, Jim, to read the script. So,
sounds good.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this rules workshop. I am Amelia Boyd, and I am the program manager for the commission and the organizer for this webinar. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available sometime next week. The documents which will be discussed here today are available in the handout section and also on our website, which is wmc.wa.gov. All attendees are muted. Panelists may unmute themselves and share their webcam. Attendees, if you have a question, please use the raise your hand function or use the questions section, and I will get to your questions as quickly as possible. So for right now, I will begin the roll call of panelists and staff. When I call your name, please introduce yourself. So first up is Ariel. If you could go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Ariel Page Landstrom, Supervising Staff Attorney for the Medical Commission.
Thank you. And next up would be Heather. If you could go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Heather Carter. I'm an Assistant Attorney General and I'm Legal Advisor to the Commission.
And then Jim, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Jim Anderson. I'm a PA, and I'm a member of the Commission. And I will be the chair of this proceeding.
And then Jimmy Bush, if you could introduce yourself.
I'm Jimmy Bush. I'm the Director of Quality and Engagement with the Medical Commission.
And then Dr. Chung, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Jimmy Chung, Commissioner with the Washington Medical Commission.
And then Mr. Farrell, I made you a panelist in case anyone has some questions. Could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, Michael Farrell, Policy Development Manager of Washington Medical Commission.
And then next up is Stephanie.
I'm Stephanie Mason. I'm the Legislative Liaison for the Washington Medical Commission.
And then Teresa.
Hi, my name is Teresa Schimmels. I'm a Physician Assistant member of the Washington State Medical Commission.
And thank you all so much. And Mr. Anderson, you can go ahead and begin to read the script, please.
You betcha. So good afternoon, and my name is Jim Anderson. I'm a PA, and I'll be the presiding officer for this rules workshop. Today is Wednesday, January 13th, 2021. and it's currently 2:08 p.m. This meeting is being held via the GoToWebinar platform. The rule being discussed today is regarding Chapter 246-918 WAC, WAC, which is the Physician Assistant chapter, as well as Substitute House Bill 2378, which is concerning physician assistants. The pre-proposal rules package was filed in the Washington State Register as number 20-24-015 on November 19th, 2020. At this time, Ms. Boyd will provide a brief presentation about this rulemaking.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. So we'll just briefly go over what is a rule. So it's a regulation which applies broadly across a group of individuals. In this case, it would be physician assistants. And then it establishes penalties if the rules are violated. It's a qualification or requirement that gives a benefit or privilege, or sets qualifications or standards that an individual or entity must meet to get a license or permit, or it sets standards that must be met before a product or material can be sold. So why are we doing this rule? So we are mandated to review our chapters every 5 years. So this rulemaking is part of that review. We did review and decided there were some places that we needed to update the physician chapter to more closely align with the current industry standards, and to modernize these regulations to align with current national standards and best practices, provide clearer rules language, and incorporate the requirements of Substitute House Bill 2378. And then this is our proposed rule development timeline, which we will talk more about later. So I will pass it back over to you, Jim.
Thank you. So we will now discuss the draft language. Ms. Boyd will take us through the draft.
Hold on just a moment. Have to find it. There it is. So what we typically do when we're doing these chapter reviews is we sort of start at the beginning. We've made a couple of changes in this chapter, some suggested proposed, I guess, draft language changes, and then we will also talk about, if we get to it, the additions we're going to be making based on the Substitute House Bill. So if anyone has any questions or comments about what is in the draft, we usually start at the beginning and go through any changes we're planning to make. And the first thing is that this is an old version of these rules. So it says Washington Medical Commission now is what's actually in the rule now, because we did update our name in there already. So we're starting out with the definitions. The one big change we made here is just removing, since we changed our name, removing quality assurance from the commission definition. And then we are striking out the delegation agreement definition, which I'm assuming has something to do with the House bill. So if anyone has any corrections on that, just let me know. And then we're doing a little reordering. And then part of this change of the physician assistant definition is because of House bill, because of the House bill that we'll talk about, because that House bill is incorporating the PAs who are supervised by osteopathic physicians as well. Let me see when the next change is. So my understanding is that the delegation agreement is now going to be called practice agreement, which is why we've changed this and added in this new definition.
So are there any additional questions or comments about the draft language? So seeing none.
Actually, Jim, I just have a quick comment.
Sure.
I like the language. I had 2 questions. I sent them to Amelia a little bit later this afternoon than I really wanted to. One of the things is the commission is going through and changing our gender issues, not issues, but gender names to make them more neutral, is I wondered about if this would be a good place to start with changing his and her or himself or herself to they, themself, or themselves, or just change it to the PA, should, would, could, whatever. That might be something to think about while we've got this open, since we're working on those issues.
That is something we have been doing. We just recently did that in the physicians chapter. So that is something that we will be updating.
Okay, great. And then my last question is do we still have PA surgical assistants? I sent a little note to licensing to find out if we had anybody that was still licensed under that. Because I'm wondering at this point if that's something that can be removed from our rules this time around, since we're no longer, I don't know that we have anybody licensed to still be a PA surgical assistant anymore. And I'm not, of course, talking about those PAs that are in orthopedics or cardiothoracic surgery or those kinds of folks that are PACs. This was a separate license that these folks got. Primarily, they were working, I believe, in open heart surgery and things like that years and years and years ago. It was one of those things we grandfathered in previous rules.
So I want to say that we did check in on that, and I think we have a few.
Okay.
But I will have to follow up with licensing and make sure.
Okay, because that would be
Look
something
at
we
my
could
notes.
probably get rid of if we don't have any more licensed. Because again, I know that last time we opened the rules up, that was something that we grandfathered in.
Let me look at my notes.
We did check in on that, and Jimmy, you can chime in too. There definitely were a few people that still fell into that because we wanted to maybe take that language out, but there still were a few people that were licensed under.
Okay, good
the
to know.
surgical- the
Thanks.
surgical
Thanks,
assistant.
Ariel.
Yeah, so we don't issue that license type anymore. And there are still practicing PAs that fell into that. They are in orthopedics and things of that nature. But there are still some folks out there that meet that definition.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Okay, so are there any questions from the attendees that have not been answered at this time?
Let me see if there's one question that's asking about if the term osteopathic physician is redundant, as they are also physicians. The reason we have to call them out separately is because they are under a different disciplinary authority than allopathic physicians. So that's why we have to name them separately. Hopefully that answered your question, Linda.
Very good. It's nice to know that some people are following along with the action. And thank you for the question, Linda. Any other questions that have not been answered, or?
Not so far. So we'll just keep motoring along through
All right.
here.
Very good. So we thank you for your participation. Amelia,
Hold on just a second, Jim.
Oh, sure.
So we're just going to motor through this draft language and see if there's any comments from the panel.
Thank you.
Because Teresa's talked about her comments. Did any of the other panelists have any comments?
I don't.
None from me, thank you.
So the other big changes we have, and then Ariel, if you have any comments about, it starts with this section on practice agreements. My assumption is that a lot of the changes here are due to the House bill that we're dealing with.
Right, and this is really meant to work in conjunction with the bill. A lot of the requirements for practice agreements are going to be in that bill, or now that they're in statute. So a PA will have to look both here in the rules and in the statute to see what is required for practice agreements and their supervising physicians.
So a lot of this, it looks like we're striking.
Right, because the bill language is pretty comprehensive. So it's not that the requirements for practice agreements are going away. There still are requirements. It's just that they're in statute now. They are changing somewhat, but it's that it's in statute now.
There's not a lot changed here. And then one other thing we will be adding, which has not been added yet, is we have an interpretive statement on the use of gloves that we'll be adding in, just like we did with the physicians chapter. We recently added that information in there.
Great, thank you.
And we're actually taking care of this AIDS education in a different, because we're doing this one as expedited. So we're doing it under a separate 103, which will be filed soon.
So Ms. Boyd, when you say a 103, can you tell me more about what that means?
So that's the final step in the rules process. Once we approve that 103, then and we file it, then the rules will be effective. And since it's expedited, we skip the hearing part because we're just removing language to meet the requirements of a bill. So that's why that one is expedited. We've already filed the 105, which is the expedited, but we still have to do the 103 to make it permanent rule.
Great, thank you.
So Ariel, it looks like you had a question here in this section. As to whether we would need this.
So this is the part that's applicable to the osteopathic physician assistants that will be coming over to the medical commission. I mean, I was asking the question to Micah, but
Yeah, and he's saying we should just leave it in.
it was what information or application information would we require of these when they will be coming over? They'll be, you know, they'll all be called physician assistants. What information would we require of them?
And this is the parts where, or these are the parts where if anybody has a question, then we certainly need to deal with those things. Okay, we do have a question. Let's see if I can read it. Okay, so we have a question. I'll just read it real quick and then I can respond to it as well. She says, this is Melissa Johnson with the Washington Association of Nurse Anesthetists. House Bill, which is the one we're dealing with, House Bill 2378 now allows PAs to administer general and intrathecal anesthesia. As the bill passed, it was the intent that the education and training requirements would be addressed in this rulemaking. They will be addressed, it just not at this particular workshop. We are going to deal with those in a future workshop. And then we have another question. She says, I'd second Ariel's question. What new information might be required for this application? Is that something we know at this point?
I mean, it was a question that I raised when I drafted this. I tried to when I drafted it, I tried to draft it as broadly as possible so that we would be able to get the information that we needed from these folks. So, you know, but I didn't know what information we would need. I mean, the application process I think is similar, if not the same, for right now for osteo PAs and allopathic PAs. But I think we would need somebody from licensing,
Mhm.
but I don't know if we would need additional information from them.
I think the licenses, when we redid the rules 6 years ago or whenever it was that we last did this, 7 years ago, I think we tried to make some of the applications pretty much the same. Would this have anything to do with some of the census data and things like that? Are they filling that out as well? Is that a requirement for the osteopathic PA license? And I apologize that I don't know that.
I am not sure.
I think Micah had raised the issue of demographic type information, and I don't know if the osteo board requires that kind of thing, and that's something that the kind of information that we like to require. But as far as credentialing, the types of credentialing should be the same, and we should get that type of information from the osteo board. So I just wanted it to be flexible so that if we needed to get additional information, we were able to do that. But it shouldn't be, the intent is not for it to be onerous for these folks to come over to the medical commission. It's just for us to be able to get the information that we need.
So we have a couple of
According-
comments. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, according to the osteo licensing requirements on the DOH website, they do have a personal data question set that is required.
So we have a couple of comments from Linda Dale. First, she says hi to you and Jim, Teresa. And then she says, if the osteopathic PA now completes an application from the WMC, the data should then be the same. And then she also says, Teresa, I was in the group or on the group making the applications and delegation agreements the same, and you are correct.
Thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. I thought we had tried to make them so that they were standardized back then. Glad to see you, Linda.
Okay. And now, just making sure this is actually, all right. So I think we're done with this part unless anyone has any suggested changes to this draft language. I'm gonna pause my screen real quick. My scrolling is very fast, and so.
So Amelia, should I proceed or?
Nope, we're still going through the draft language. I'll let you know.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
So we're striking this section, which was called requirements for obtaining an allopathic physician assistant license for those who hold an active osteopathic physician assistant license, because that license type is going away. So there won't be a need for that once these are filed. And I'm assuming that's also why we are striking this scope of practice osteopathic alternate physician section.
Sorry, that was a yes. You're probably not seeing my nodding of head while you're reading it.
Because I'm looking at another screen. You're over here on this screen. I'm looking over here on this screen.
Sorry, I'm like
thought,
nodding and I'm thinking, she can't see me.
No.
I just thought you were sleepy.
That too.
And we're changing every reference to sponsoring physician to supervising physician. Okay, so then we're also striking remote site. So we're striking the remote site section because there's new, or they remove the requirements for that.
It's actually new. There still is remote site definition, but now it's it doesn't have to be approved by the Washington Medical Commission.
Okay.
So right, Teresa?
That section was
Correct,
repealed
Jim.
by the bill.
Gotcha.
Yes,
That's what I
yeah, and
figured.
it was spelled out pretty clearly there. In the statute actually was really very well written.
Not making many changes here. I'm going to pause this again until I can get to the next section. Blah, 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 blah. That's our remote site. Fortunately, we are not making a whole lot of changes to this chapter. So I think the next one is the new sections that we've added. Let me get down there. Okay. So it looks like we have some new, I'm not sure why these are in here.
I don't think there's anything new. Those are the opioid rules. They just showed up that way because they were not in
Gotcha.
the language that I had. So when I added them, they showed up as new when I cut and paste them.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because we are not touching those, the opioid prescribing sections, because
Yeah,
we just finished those.
right. There just were the references to I think it was because there's references to osteopath PAs or to 1857A, something like that.
So if we need to update those, that's easy. It's not a big deal. So I will go through those again and make sure there's not any changes in that section, but I don't think there will be. If there are, it's not a big deal to change them because they're just routine.
Yeah, there's both references to allopathic PAs and osteopathic
Gotcha.
PAs in 1857A. So those are the kinds
Yeah.
of things. And then delegation agreements, those kind of things.
So I will
But yeah,
clean up those
there's
pieces.
no whole new sections that have to be added to this
Got
chapter.
ya. Okay, I will make sure those get cleaned up then as part of this rulemaking.
So just language change is all that is.
Right. It's just
Okay.
cleaning it up so that it's
Uniform.
yeah, and it's removing the pieces that no longer apply.
Right. Okay. I can see that now.
Because we have this, like this change here, allopathic physician assistant or osteopathic physician assistant. Since osteopathic is going away, it will just be if a physician assistant. And then we have to change that delegation to practice agreement. So it's little things like that. Yeah. Which I will make sure those get cleaned up, but those will be a separate. Sorry, my scrolling makes some people ill, so I have to pause it when I'm scrolling. Okay, so unless there's any questions about the draft language in any other way, then that is all we have to talk about in the draft right now. So I don't have any hands raised and there's no additional questions in the question box. So if the panelists have any other suggestions for draft language, or if there's anything else we need to discuss with the draft language, then we can do that now. And Ariel, I think this version of the draft incorporates most of the changes from the bill, correct?
Yes.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like there's any other questions. So Jim, if you want to go ahead with the next piece of the script, now is the time.
Yeah, sure. So I think we've already answered some of those things. Are there any other questions from the attendees that have not been answered?
There isn't.
And therefore, at this point, we thank you all for your participation. And immediately we'll now discuss the next steps.
All right, let me get that set up. So here is our proposed rule development timeline. Now with rulemaking, sometimes this gets messed up, and so, hold on, sorry, background noise. Sometimes the timeline gets thrown out the window because of, you know, any number of reasons, but this is what we're going to try to stick to. We will probably have another workshop. If not next month, it will be March, and we will talk more about the draft language and anything else we may have to deal with as part of the bill that we are also incorporating into this rulemaking. So if you have any questions about the timeline, you can ask them now. Doesn't look like it. And let me pull up. And then, so our next steps are that we will have at least one more workshop, possibly two. And then we will bring our draft language to the policy committee at the April meeting. And then if they recommend approval, we will bring the draft language to the full commission the next day at the April meeting, the business meeting. And then we will send, our ask at that April meeting will be that we start the 102 process, which is the next step. And then we will draft all the required documents for the 102 and send it to the Department of Health's review in April. And then once that 102 gets filed, there will be a hearing, and I'm hoping to have it in August, maybe July. It depends on how quickly the Department of Health reviews all of our documents. There will be a 30-day comment period, 5 weeks. It'll start 5 weeks prior to the hearing, and we will accept comments during that time. And then anytime there's a CR 101 open, which is the pre-proposal, which we're in right now, we accept comments throughout that time. You can send them directly to me or to our medical.rules@wmc.wa.gov address, and we will consider them at the next workshop. If you aren't subscribed to our GovDelivery for rules, here is the link to do that, and I am happy to send that to anyone who needs it. And then here are our resources, and that is all that I have.
Let's see. So, is there anyone else who wishes to comment? And if there's no one else who wishes to speak, then I will close the workshop. Thank you all for your participation.
Thanks, everyone. See some of you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.